Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show. Another exciting show, and today, another exciting guest. Not just any guest. This guest was with me when I first started this venture. Not only is he a great supporter, but he's also a great mentor. Let's go even deeper with this guy. He likes cigars. They call him Dr. Love on the side. He's a Kiss band fanatic. He loves horror. And he actually taught me about cigars. You know, I really knew nothing about cigars until I met him. But without further ado, let's welcome to the show the one, the only Dr. Love himself. I guess I can call him professor because was also my English professor, Dr.
That's right.
Mark Justice.
Hey, Andre. That's great to see you, man. You're looking good. And the studio's looking good. Yeah.
Hey, you're looking good. Got the beard growing on.
A little trim. Yeah, it's good to be back. It's been a couple years. I really had a great time last time, and I'm just happy to be back. And it's so awesome to see your I Am Beast network just growing and evolving and turning into the monster that it is. So kudos to you, man.
Thank you. Check this out. Did you ever think in your wildest dreams that our paths would continuously cross? Because I remember coming into your class, and I told you I was scared shitless when you kicked the girl out of the class.
That sounds like something I would have done a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, he's not to fuck with.
I'm happy to say I'm a different teacher today. But yeah, okay. You know, I know I get it. It's been thrilling to see you, you know, from that early time, from when you approached me about writing your book, you know, to starting this network, to all the strides that you have made to get to where you are now. And so I'm just happy to be able to be a small part of that and to continue to support the network. So, yeah.
Actually, you was a lot bigger than part of my life than what you think, because had I not taken your class, had I not met you, had I not had the battles with fighting for Cinnamon and dealing with the chaos, and especially being a man of color, dealing with the legal system and trying to get a child. I mean, I remember in your classroom, you said, you say, you told everybody to cut their phones off. And I was like, look, man, I get it. This is your class, but I got to keep this BlackBerry on. You know, I can get called anytime. And I like the way you was really compassionate with me. You know, a lot of the teachers, you know, were a little bit different, but you understood what I had to deal with, and was like, you know, you leave your phone on. And I remember that to this day.
Thank you for those kind words. And I'm really humbled that you continue to think of me as a mentor. So that's. As a teacher, we don't really hear those kinds of things, and to know that that's been the case, it's humbling, and I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be your friend, and I'm glad that we're still in touch with one another, and you know, so I'm just happy for you, man. I really am. Thank you.
Now let's talk about your show. Enough about me, and we getting all mushy and shit. Let's get down to the real nitty gritty. You left teaching, but before we get into your story, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are, because this is a whole new. I'm not going to say it's a whole new chapter of your life, but let me explain to people that beast mindset that you have, and I'm gonna go here with this. You being a professor at one point at Lorain Community College in Ohio, outside of Cleveland, Avon Lake, the surrounding area. You're now so transparent with this, and you know, my hats off to you, because most teachers are educators, and I used to be a school teacher too. They won't be this bold to exploit what they've gone through from childhood to where you at now. So before we get into this part of your journey, tell the viewers a little bit about who you are first.
Well, Well, what do you want to know? I mean, I'm Mark Justice, and I did teach for a long time, and I took some time off. I took 5 years off, teaching. I was really burned out, and massively depressed, and I used writing as a way to kind of work through those things. It became very cathartic and very like therapeutic, and so I wrote a couple books and kind of got me out of the hole that I was in, and after 5 years away doing other work, I thought, and I had a really wonderful experience going back to grad school for getting some work in technical writing. And I had such a positive experience from my instructors that I thought, I want to be that instructor, because the way we were taught before was about, we need to be gatekeepers. If people don't pass your class, then, right, they don't pass the school. And so it was a very different mindset than it is now. And I'm really glad now it's more student focused because, after 5 years, I got back into teaching. I'm teaching at a wonderful school in Michigan, Delta College. And, I have all the academic freedom I want. Class sizes are half the size I used to have before. And so it's been an amazing experience, a very supportive community. And then I got into doing e-learning as well with a wonderful company, Dynamic Training Resources in Wisconsin. So I think I've kind of come through this, working through all these issues as a much different person. And I have a much, much better outlook on things, and what I've processed, what I've gone through with my deconstruction of my faith. I mean, I'm still mourning a lot of loss, and I think that's where I'm at. I'm still grieving for all the things that I have lost in the last couple of years. But the things that I do, like my podcasts, I get to hang with my friends. Those things make me truly happy, and it gives me purpose again, And so. Yeah, and I think of you, actually, because of what you continue to go through. I Am Beast, your I Am Beast network and the mentality, the beast mentality, because every time I see you go through another knee operation, I'm like, Jesus, man, this guy, and I'm just like, my heart's out there for you. So I think that's a reason why we kind of resonate with one another. We understand that beast mentality and like, look, sometimes you get down, you have to look and dig yourself out. Nothing against like getting help. I'm all for getting help if you need it. Therapy is wonderful. I saw a wonderful cognitive therapist that helped me help myself, so being able to recognize those things. Yeah. No.
Not a minute, Mark. I didn't mean to cut you off, but let's go back a minute.
Sure.
So the viewers can understand. Here's a person that I think at certain parts of our life, we all think that we got it all together. And then it's always those things that chip at us that we think may be small, but then they begin to manifest into something way bigger than what we expected. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions going back on what you just resonated with.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the burnout first. Did you always, let me go here with this so this makes sense. Did you know writing was something you always wanted to do as a child? When did that take place? And then the second part of that is, what was missing in your involvement as far as being a great educator and a great writer? Because you clearly said when you went back, you had great mentors that kind of elevated, kind of embraced you in a different way with what the purpose of education actually consists of.
Well, I really didn't. I mean, I've always liked the idea of being a writer. I just never knew how to write, as creatively. And I really didn't start writing until like a senior year in high school. I took a creative writing class and I loved it. I'm like, oh, this is great, So I went in for my bachelor's degree in creative writing through Bowling Green and just did poetry and short fiction and things like that. I was always afraid of writing long fiction because I was afraid that I couldn't write realistic dialogue, And it wasn't until I started writing my movies. I did three movies, really comedies, schlocky comedies, of my own independent movie company, Cyclops Movies. I did Monster Party Beach, Sorority Sisters versus Sasquatch, and Quest for Uranus. Those were all dialogue. I mean, it was just, and I realized, this is, I can do this, no problem. So, then I started working on long fiction that way. But to get back to your point about teaching, I was burned out. I've been burned out for about 5 years, the last 5 years or so, because of the lack of ability to advance. I had been up for a couple full-time gigs and didn't get it. The continuing pressures on and changing ideas of how the school made money. They were like telling us to encourage students to stay in class, and they didn't say grade inflation, but they certainly were like skirting around the issue. And I'm like, no, that you can't tell me to hold someone up to a standard and then tell me to elevate their grades to make them happy, just keep their butts in seats. So it was just a very different kind of mindset. And I just was done. I'm like, no, I got nothing more to give, and again, with the depression and things like that, I just took off. But after my experience back at Bowling Green, it was like, I understand teaching in a different way because I'm being nurtured now. I'm being seen as a whole person, not just what I do academically, but there's a whole layers of understanding and empathy that were never really part of the teaching process before when you were my student. And so I wanted to be that kind of teacher going forward. And I've really worked hard to be that kind of teacher, being supportive when I can. I mean, I can't make my students read or follow directions, but I can really work hard to be supportive and try to help them understand, like, look, I'm helping you learn skills that you're going to use as a student, not just in my English class, but as long as you're a college writer and you got to learn how to do analysis and synthesis and make arguments and provide evidence in your reasoning, that's what I'm going to do. So it's a much different place that I'm at now than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And I'm grateful for what I've gone through, because I know that I can look back and say, yeah, that was a really terrible time. And I worked really hard to get out of it. And I don't ever want to go back again,
I think most people fail to realize that there's a difference in education from when you first go to school, from middle school to junior high to high school to college. Totally different. And what happens is individuals fail to realize when you get to college, it's a business. It's not like high school. It's a business. And teachers get paid, instructors, educators get paid when students stay in those seats. So now you have to ask yourself as an educator, do I really, and I get what you're saying, because I got to take the people down the rabbit hole so they can understand the reason that you decided to go through all the things you went through. When you got kids that don't have that, let me say kids, I'm not going to say kids. We have young men and women that are in these classrooms. Their money keeps the school going. It pays the teacher. And don't get me wrong, the teachers, it's a different level of experience. When you get in college, the ideal is you need to use your resource, which is your professor or your educator, and to say, okay, what do I need to do? How can you make this particular class in a way I can learn? Because I'm a firm believer everybody learns differently. I remember I'm gonna use myself at Lorraine College, so I'm gonna clear this up for the listeners. I did a math class with the lady that was in the class, that was the professor. I didn't want to mess up my GPA or being on the dean's list, so I remember getting ready to withdraw from her class. She almost had a fit. I didn't understand what was about to happen, but I realized the more people that dropped out of her class, she would have lost her job. But what I told her, because when I went back to school, I was in my 40s when I went back. I was like, look, I don't want to drop your class, but I don't want it to affect my grade point average. So this is what we need to do. I'm not telling you how to do your job, but I'm way older than people in my classroom. So there's, like you said, there's a way in which I was used to learning a particular area, and we're talking about mathematics. If you can take the time to show me the way I learned in a way to easily navigate, then I won't get out of your class. But to close this part out, listeners need to understand that at the end of the day, you still want to be recognized for the fact that you are an educator at the highest level of education. You're not junior high, you're not middle school, you're college. Different level mindsets, different level of pay. But it's not your job to make sure that all those kids stay in that seat, even though they don't want to learn. I couldn't even consider myself being a motivator if everybody in there wants to play the clown and really not interested in the amount of years that I put into my craft.
Yeah.
So
in the post-COVID world here in the last couple of years, the generations of students that I've seen have been affected by not being in school. I mean, they missed some formative years. So they don't like to read.
Right.
And some of them don't like to follow directions, but they also don't ask questions.
Why do you think people don't like to, Mark, why do you think people don't like to read? Because you know what? I have a lot of authors that come on my show. And I think I'm not high-fiving not liking to read. But it's funny, there's been a complete shift that people really, believe it or not, we see tons of writers since COVID, but nobody's reading their material, because when they come on my show, I'm like, look, dude, you're going to have to figure out how to pivot because people don't want to read.
And while KDP has been really disruptive, Kindle Direct Publishing, has been disruptive to the publishing market, the average book only sells about 1,000 copies in its lifetime. People just don't want to read. So I think because we have a lot of other things fighting for that free time, and I think and now we have AI instant. And, I'm not trying to lay it all on the fact that we have a shortened attention span, but there's something to that. We're so used to getting immediate gratification. Like when we were growing up, we had the TV guide. We might have to wait till Friday night to see the movie we want to see. Now we just stream it anytime we want. We don't have to even go get it on, video. We just get it. So I think there's something to that. And every generation is a little different, so again, not laying blame, just saying we have generational differences and we have to find in routes to them. But I can't make my students read. I can remind them hey, this is important. Make sure you follow these instructions. I've given you very clear directions on your assignment sheet. Please make sure that you follow them. But I can't enforce that until they turn something in, but my mindset is different than what it used to be, and that I see myself more as a coach now and more of an encourager. Hey, and so when I break down a paper grading, I use a rubric, fairly detailed rubric. It breaks down very specific things so that you might have a lot of really good things and maybe only a few things to work at. So students could see, these two areas I really need to develop more, but I'm doing a great job on these. So there's opportunity for me to say, hey, you did a fantastic job on the intro sentence, or a great job on your thesis. You need to work on X, Y, or Z. And so it's a more holistic approach to grading, and I'm hopeful it works, but I have noticed, and a lot of teachers I've heard from are kind of saying the same thing. Their students are just not involved. They're not coming to class, even virtually. They're not doing the work. They're just kind of chiming in, but not really doing anything. So I'm not sure what's at the heart of that, but it makes it difficult. Right. I mean, at the end of the day, I have to say, look, what do you think? Here's the school policy, and here are the papers, and here's the work. And if you miss X number of classes, then you can't pass the class. But it's really kind of up to the student.
Right.
And if there's an issue, I just simply say, look, just talk to me. I mean, if there's a problem, I have to know, and try to just leave it up to them.
Before we wrap up on the education part, let me go here for a minute. And because this is all going to revert back to questions and answers that I have for you.
Yeah.
We talked about AI, and you said something that I talk to my kids about all the time, man. You guys live in a great age. I said, you don't even remember a payphone. You don't even remember, a pager, a Walkman,
card catalog,
DVD when it first came out. Yeah. We was driving before there was
you had a map, you had an atlas.
I remember at 18, 17 years old, there was nothing for me as a professional bodybuilder to get on the road and just go to different states and cities and only use a map to get there. And they look at you like you're crazy. Like, what's a map?
I know. Yeah, I would drive down to see my grandma and grandpa in South Carolina, and I would have a map. with me, in Atlas, but then my dad would like handwrite the instructions down so I could follow it. But still, now I love my GPS. That's my favorite piece of technology because I hate going any place I've not been before. I want to make sure that I can get out, I can get home, if I need. So I'm grateful for that technology.
Yeah, especially when you go to Chicago.
Yeah.
You want to get in and get out quick.
Chicago's always a mess. They're always doing work around that city.
Yeah.
Sure.
So let me ask this question. Knowing what you know now and the years and the service that you put into your career to go back and open up doors for students, AI has clearly changed that whole perception. Where do you see our generation? Because I'm all about involvement. Don't get me wrong. I'm all about involvement, getting higher and higher. AI has taken us to such extreme levels that I'm beginning to think, this is just my theory, the reason for absence of reading is so we can become more dependent on AI basically doing everything for us. Almost like I always tell people, Hollywood tells you what's about to happen. I say, go and watch iRobot. People think less, robots do more. They're now bringing pizza to your house.
I mean, we get drones that'll do that. Driverless cars that will stop off. Yeah, I just had an issue with AI, and the school where I teach is great. They let every teacher decide how they want to approach it. I have a strict prohibition against it. I don't want any of my students using AI because I want them to learn how to think first. And that's the problem. I agree. I think AI can be a great tool, just like we grew up, with the card catalog and learning how to find texts and books and stuff. Then we moved on to search engines, which are tremendous. A search engine, especially if you go through like a college search engine, their database is amazing. You can get texts right to your computer. Oh, it's a beautiful age. Well, AI does all the thinking. It can be a nice tool, but it's not there yet. It produces garbage. It produces things that are not accurate. So if people are relying on it, and that's the situation I found myself in. A student turned a paper in that was written by AI. And I'm like, that's just not going to fly.
It was written by AI. Like
that was cited, but did not exist. It was not the one that I assigned for the paper. We have a textbook for our whole class, and the student didn't use that. I'm like, I don't know this book. Let me do a search. So it wasn't on Amazon. It wasn't on Google. It wasn't anywhere. I looked up the publisher. The publisher didn't exist. And when I confronted the student about it, they kind of were trying to be very cagey and dodge it. But yeah, so, but that student, eventually withdrew because, but it's a dangerous tool because, especially in the hands of people who don't know how to think or how to do research on their own. And that's the problem, I think. I would rather have my students learn how to do those things first, and then.
What do you mean when you say it's a dangerous tools for those individuals that don't know how to think? That's
if I hadn't done my due diligence, because the paper that was turned in was written pretty well. I'm like, oh, this is a pretty good paper, but I'm like, wait a minute, there's something wrong about it here. If I hadn't been cognitive enough then to look at the close-up of the quotes and what was being written about, and could look at the works cited page and say this text, and do the searching myself, like know how to look for things, I wouldn't have found the flaw in this. So I think having a tool is wonderful, but you're not going to give a child a chainsaw. I mean, they're just going to hurt themselves or hurt other people. So AI can be a great tool, and it can do wonderful things, although I don't like the push for it because of all the damage it does to our environment with all the clean water and the energy that it sucks up. We're putting the cart way before the horse here. And because it's going to make people money. A few people are going to make money off of this, and I think that's what's driving it, sadly. But yeah, I want students to think for themselves and learn how to think critically, meaning carefully and closely. And then learning how to use the tools and learn those things for themselves. And then if you want to use AI to fact check or verify or something like that, or even help you, I need an outline and I need to do this something like that is fine, but I would keep it out of academic writing at all of it. And just, I want to see the student's original work. That's the whole point. Students are going to be getting a degree. I want to know what they think and how they think.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's go here. This is going to get deep. So I want the viewers to listen to this. Let's talk about the deconstruction after Christianity and the fact that you went through your own, let me use the right word here, post-traumatic religious
there's religious trauma syndrome. That's a real thing. I'm the poster child. Well, I grew up in a Pentecostal background, and the Pentecostals have it pretty bad, they, as opposed to other sects of Christianity. But it took me 40 years to come to the point where I listened to my cognitive dissonance. I mean, even as a child, I was like, something just doesn't make sense. Why does God allow Satan to live? Why did God treat Job so terribly? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, this loving God, like, why is he so psychotic in the Old Testament and seems so loving in the New Testament? And then I just see all the contradictions in the Bible that because I was taught to take the Bible literally, which is one of the two major lies that Christianity fosters, the idea of inerrancy and the univocality, meaning one voice over all of it. And they're ignoring that the Bible was written by dozens of writers over, hundreds of years. Each writer has his own rhetorical needs or goals, like his own audience and his own goals for writing. And think of the Bible as more of a patchwork quilt than a single solidified sheet of material. And when you were taught that everything is true and everything's all this meta narrative, then you start looking at things that don't make sense. And that's what, for me, didn't. Like, wait a minute, God created two people. Okay, Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. Okay, Cain kills Abel. Okay, where did they get their children? Where did they get their wives? So is he having sex with his mom, or and then there's all kinds of things that when you look at historically these cultures, that's why there's sex trafficking of children. God says, go murder all the Amalekites, but keep all the virginal children, the girls, for yourself. That's kind of fucked up, isn't it? What's up with that? Then you look at the Tower of Babel. Wait a minute. So God's afraid of a tower? What is up with this God? And all kinds of things that just don't make sense. And then you start doing the research into the Bible history and how it was written. And there's no original text. There are fragments and bits and pieces. And most of these pieces were written in the medieval times. And the Gospels weren't written until decades after Jesus died. And, Paul doesn't write about the resurrection, so there's just so much contradiction in it. And I listen to just okay, things don't make sense, especially if we read Ezekiel, the prophecy, but that's supposedly the end times where the new temple is being built. And these are sacrifices for sin. You're going to be doing a new altar and new animal sacrifices again. Wait a minute, wasn't that what Jesus was supposed to do? And then they keep on spinning it, the spin, that that's not what it means. Oh, no, I've done the research. It's exactly what it means. Sin. Yeah.
Well, doesn't it sound like a screenplay? And this is the part that kind of kills me. I always tell somebody, if this is the number one selling book in the world, especially on U.S. soil, did anybody ever think to ask who King James is? Did anybody ever think to ask who Constantine is? Did anybody think about the missing books and how if Noah populated the repopulated Earth, what about the Chinese? What about all the other?
I mean, we have incest twice. It's go and have sex with your family. Yes, it's the thing is, Christians are taught that these are real things, not metaphors, not stories. I mean, the flood myth was 1,200 years old when it shows up in the Bible. It was old news, This came from Samaria. So I think, but most Christians, and I did some research on this too, most Christians don't read their Bible. They get their Bible in church. And it's not, not enough. And there's nothing more dangerous to a Christian than an atheist who knows their Bible, like me. That's why I wrote, Toxic,
don't you think it's even worse? Don't you think it's even dangerous? It's almost like what you said about AI. If I'm going to take a particular topic and enforce it, because let's get real, a lot of wars were fought under religious.
The one that we're in right now, the illegal war in Iran, is because we have Pete Hegseth, who's a Christian nationalist, and the whole ilk, and they're thinking they're going to bring back Jesus' return. But what those idiots don't know is that whole rapture ideology came about in the 19th century, the middle of the 19th century. It was invented. And that's the stuff I grew up being taught, because being Pentecostal, I'm in that thin sliver of Christians who believe in the rapture, and a lot of them don't, because there are thousands of sects of Christianity and they all disagree, which should be very telling that says there's no God here, because you would think there would be one message. God would just show up and say, hey, here's what I meant. But, so that's part of it. Yeah.
Do you get met with resistance when you, I'm going to use this as an example. That guy, Billy, whatever, went on that, I can't think, Billy Carson. He's big on the Anunnakis and going really, really deep. And he went on to somebody's podcast platform, and basically he didn't get, it wasn't the forum for him to be on. So he got challenged with somebody who was speaking one way of the old, new, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, okay, if I was Billy, I wouldn't have put myself in that kind of situation, because clearly this guy did not know anything about the Anunnakis and all the, the deities who claim themselves God, because they can do, let's call them extraterrestrials, so to speak. They have better equipment than modern day man. So he walked himself in. So my question to you is, you grew up 30 years plus in a particular sector. How are you being treated now?
A lot of my family and friends who are believers, some are very supportive, some are very sad, some try to convert me back to Christianity. And I'm like, you don't bring the slave back to the plantation. It's not going to happen.
Wow.
And when I confront them with things that I know about the Bible, because I know their Bible better than they do, most part. I'm not being arrogant. I've always known the Bible very well. Oh. And I've learned a lot about how those doctrines showed up and all the places where man have made things and invented things. And when I ask questions like Genesis 6:6, how could God repent or regret something that he had done? Like, well, they just don't know how to answer it. And that's the thing. They just deny, like, well, we see through a glass darkly. We don't understand. Like, oh, no, it's bullshit. Your God gave you a book with all the fucking rules. So you had better learn the rules. And the fact that I know them and you can't give me an answer for things tells me that people are really just tied into their dogma and their belief because it makes them who they are. Their identity is rooted in that belief. And without that, they don't have anything. But the church wants people to believe just enough, but not to be too smart, not to know their Bible too well enough to question it. And that's the problem. So I do have run-ins with some family members, and they're resistant. And they've told me, like, flat out, well, the evidence you point, show me it's not going to change my belief. And I go, well, then you're the problem, because you're telling me you're a flat earther now. That's all you are to me. It's a flat earther, because you are telling me no matter what evidence is presented to you, you will not change your beliefs. And so they are a closed system. And that's why they will simply believe stories, but cherry pick the pretty ones. Let's not talk about the Old Testament stories about God sending bears to maul these boys. No. Let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about these painful things that are just, let's talk about the zombies that came and walked around the streets when Jesus apparently rose from the dead. All the dead came out of their graves. Not one person has ever written about that. There's no historical. You think that would be big news? Like, oh my God, all the zombies. Everybody, grandma's walking around again. Let's talk with grandma. But not one. So these stories are just simply accepted because of the presupposition that all of this is true, and there's no need to question it. But The unexamined faith is not worth believing. And if your God can't handle some questions, then maybe your God is just not really there. So I'm like an agnostic atheist at this point. Like, there may be a God. I just don't see any evidence of one. And I just know enough about the God of the Bible and the doctrines to know enough to say, I know this is all invented. There may have been a person named Jesus, but the church wasn't even sure for about 100 years whether he was divine or not. So if they weren't sure, you know, we've just grown up in an age where it's just assumed to be true now. We've had a couple thousand years. Things have been codified, and no one questions it because if you want to be a pastor, if I want to be a pastor, I go to Bible school or I go to one of these divinity schools where they teach the doctrine and they teach the dogma, but they don't really teach the history of the book. They don't teach where the doctrines came from. And to me, we're just perpetuating lies. And so.
What do you think is the purpose that people would rather adapt to a particular belief of a story that's been written by King James and the number one bestseller, and not question who this person was, the author, like you said, doing the research.
And it's like a pyramid scheme, because you would come to church as a child, and you're being brought into this belief system as a child. That's why they're young, right? And so you don't question it. You know, I mean, when the red flags are going off in this 8-year-old brain, that should have been something, but I didn't even know. I just thought these are questions and everyone said, "Oh, you don't question God." You know, I'm like, why not? You know, yeah. Why not? But I think that's what it is. You just get indoctrinated, and by the time you were done, then you realize, because I had to go through this as well. Like, my initial anger when I wrote Toxic, I was so angry. You know, because you realize, oh my God, my life has been a lie. Everything that I was taught was a lie. And then you get the feeling of the world just like the floor just opens up and there's nothing, because you had put your faith in this God and this genie who's going to do good things for you. You put your faith in that the God has a plan and all this bullshit, and thinking this is how life is, and then you realize it's all torn away. Then you are left with nothing. But that is the most wonderful gift of all, because then you can rebuild something on a real foundation, and that's yourself. And that's what I have been doing, like in the last, in the 5 years that I wrote Toxic, or 4 years. It's been a rebuilding phase, and there's still a lot of anger and there's still a lot of frustration, because I look now at the years my life was wasted. All those things that I beat myself over for just being like a normal human being, and all the damage that the religion has done, I can never get that back. And there's no God that I can hold accountable, you know? So that's why I kind of take joy in crucifying this God in my Gage Black stories. You know, like, there's a lot of that as well. But that's how I have to deal with it. Like, I want there to be a God to be held accountable. You know, like, someone has to be held accountable for Auschwitz, for children dying of cancer. You know, someone, especially if there's someone going around saying that I'm a God and I'm all loving. Like, no, you can't be all loving and all powerful, because if you had the ability, Andre, to cure cancer with the snap of your fingers, would you? Yeah, exactly.
I would have done it in a heartbeat.
There's no God who has done that.
Yeah.
So, to me, you are more moral than any God that I'm aware of. The God of the Bible is certainly not a moral being. So, yeah.
Check this out for a minute. We had the writer Paul Young, who wrote the book The Shack on the show. And it was funny because I talked to him and I said, our beliefs are really the same. They're not religious based. They're more spiritual and universal based. And I told him at first, when I watched that movie several times, I couldn't grasp it. You know, I really didn't understand it. And it was like a couple years later, I saw it and I was like, wow, like a click just hit me. But the movie didn't click me. His personal interview with how all of it came about said something. But here's where I'm going with this question. And I know you get told this,
Right.
you're going to hell.
Sure.
But let me finish here. Let me finish this. This makes sense. In the movie, I told Paul, this tripped me out. He's the guy is deceased. He's dead. He's, in the spiritual world now. And he gets in front of, let's call it the
Sure.
guy version, but it's the girl. And she gives him a choice. She said, okay, without giving away the movie, if you ever seen it, he has to make a choice between his two kids. So he's getting put in the position to be God. And that kind of like the same question you asked me. And she said, well, what about Mackenzie? Why don't you send her to, one of your kids got to go to hell. Which one do you want? Do you want Mackenzie? She's disconnected from you, blah, blah, blah. Do you want your son? Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
He can't make the choice. Now, you said, if you had the power, you'd do this. So he had to make a choice. So his choice was take me. Okay, so now the thing opens up. All the love comes out, blah, blah, blah. So my question to you is, knowing that you've been met with the worst resentment people can give onto you, you're going to hell. How do you answer that?
I tell them, and Santa Claus isn't going to bring you any presents. I mean, you don't have to be afraid of it. Hell's a Greco-Roman construct, and in the hell in the Bible, the hell that we think of, eternal damnation, and there are three types of endings originally in the early church, as far as like people dying, and the words that were used were more like Hades, that kind of Greco-Roman. If you've ever seen the cartoon Hercules, you know what Hades looks like. And it took a long time before hell became what we believe it to be. So that tells me, okay, the hell that we have been taught is not one of the three versions in there. It took time because the church realized, we can use this as a tool to scare people and get them in the church and give us their money and go fight wars for us, and that's really all it is. So I'm not really worried about the punishment of hell. It just, Oh yeah.
Have you ever read Dante?
I mean, that ninth circle is all frozen. That sounds, I kind of feel like Sisyphus, like I'm pushing up that boulder, I got to push that boulder because I have to, even though I know it's going to roll over me and crush me. I have to push. I stopped putting Facebook posts like on my cousins' pages who are very strong believers. I got into a few rounds with them, but I know how difficult it is because you can't convince someone. As Mark Twain says, all the evidence in the world won't convince an idiot, and I just stopped because I know, look, I know what you believe in, but you are ignorant. You are ignorant of your own book. You're ignorant of your own beliefs and your own doctrines, where they came from. But I think this is a position that makes them happy, because the more you know, then the less you're going to believe, which is why the church doesn't want you to know a lot about the stuff.
Why do you think we have so many non-critical thinkers?
Well, we have a
world?
dismantling of the education system right now going under this administration, because critical thinking lets you realize the bullshit when you see it. Thinking closely and carefully allows you to also adapt your beliefs based on information, which is how science works. Which is why we're getting rid of science, because we don't want that. We would rather have brainworms, I think it's because that's why it's so important. That's why I want my students to learn how to critically think for themselves, because it goes way beyond the classroom. Critical thinking allows you to look at anything closely and carefully and to make a decision based on the evidence. And like we learned with COVID, we had to adapt. As the more we learned about COVID, the more we had to change our thinking about it. And that's great that some people were, but other people were like, oh, this is wrong. Like, we grew up in a world where there's no polio. But guess what? The people who transitioned through that with the early polio vaccines were probably like these people now who are resistant to, I don't want the jab, because they're believing some bullshit they're getting fed from Fox News or something. But critical thinking allows you to be free. It allows you to decide and be able to look for the evidence, just look at the validity of that evidence, and to decide whether you accept that or reject it. But you do it on your own power, and that's why it's so important. And I think critical thinking should be done with religion as well, all religious faiths. And unfortunately, because we're indoctrinated, we don't have that critical thinking. We grow up assuming that it's all true, and therefore we just don't question it like that. We question ourselves, oh, maybe it's my faith that was wrong. And I think that's the most insidious part of Christianity. When God doesn't show up for you, you're taught that it's somehow your fault. You didn't have the faith. You didn't do this. Wow. You must have doubted. And that is like the worst thing in the world to give to somebody. So if you're out there, and if you've been taught that God didn't show up and it's your fault, that's a fucking lie. God didn't show up because he's just not there, so just wash your hands and know that you are enough.
Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Hold that thought 1 second, Mark. Hold on 1 second. I got to let this lady know the law back in later. Hold on 1 second.
Hello.
Hi, Mark.
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
How are you? I'm great. I'm Suzanne. I'm from Chicago, and I just stepped in because Andre
No problem.
has to run to the washroom. So he did come and step in and talk. I'm really enjoying your
oh, thank you. Which one are you?
podcast.
Which one are you? Unsane Radio or Heavy Metal Horror?
No,
Oh,
this
this
is my
one.
first time here, and I was just in the back, just listening, and
Okay.
I'm like, okay. I'm really enjoying especially the AI part, with the kids going on and doing a paper. I'm like, that was pretty clever of you to go back and research. Because I was like,
Yeah.
how did he know?
Yeah.
How did you know that was an AI?
Right. Yeah, and
written
other
paper?
teachers I know have the same problems,
I mean-
and there is a software that you can like run your papers through, but I choose the assignments and I choose the readings intentionally, and so it was pretty glaring to see that the book wasn't used. Like, oh, this wasn't the book that I signed for this paper, Yeah, and that was part of it. It's just I could tell because the student, it just. And this is the problem with AI, as I was telling Andre, it creates garbage. Like it created quotes from a text that doesn't exist. It created a works cited entry for a text that doesn't exist. A publisher did not exist. So it invented these things as a means of trying to say, oh, this is legitimate. And it's not. And I think that's why it's a problem right now, because there's no safeguard in keeping it from pushing out garbage. And if people don't know any better, they're just going to use the garbage, and that could lead to serious, things that can get you killed. Like if you look up AI, oh, can I drink this liquid? And it says, oh yeah, you'll be fine. Well, no, maybe you shouldn't drink gasoline, right. So it robs us of our ability to think.
I agree, because that's almost like with Google.
Yeah.
And you going to the doctor. Well, you go to the doctor and you're like, well, I know what I have.
Right.
I Googled it.
Right.
And then, the doctor will tell you, they'll then return back and say, well, Google is going to kill you.
The
Don't
doctor's going to say, so you went to
Google."
12 years of medical school and had another 8 years of internship, right? Yes. Yeah. No, but I Googled it. So yeah, I know. I think the tools are growing more quickly than we know how to control, and I think it's part of it. I mean, it was a big jump from card catalog to search engines online. And now everyone's pushing AI so hard and so fast. I think it needs to slow down, because there's no control over it yet. There's no boundaries. There's no checks and balances to make sure that the information has been vetted, is accurate. And that's the difference in doing your own research and looking at academic articles. These things have been vetted. They've gone through peer review of other people who know the stuff. The sources have been validated. The evidence has been proven. And so when you read an academic article, you can trust that it's accurate for the time that it was written, and AI takes that and kind of pretends that it's legitimate. And for people who don't know any better, that's the scary part. That really is.
Exactly. Yeah. I think they're coming out with something else too. I caught it briefly. It was on the news. It's something that's really similar to AI, but it's I'm gonna have to go back once I get home, go back and look it up, because I'm like, is this something else coming out that's like AI that they're saying that it's not gonna be good. Just like the AI, it's not good for the kids to use it for papers and things like that, and it can get you, it really can get you in trouble. Yeah. Well, it was great talking with you. And here's Andre the Beast Creighton.
It was really nice to meet you.
You've been waiting to do that show.
No, we had a great talk. That was really wonderful.
Oh, we ain't done. Oh, with her. She's been waiting to do the show.
Is she your 5 o'clock? Okay.
No. The 5 o'clock is a doctor. I just sent her a text and said, look, I hate when people send things and they give a number and they don't answer the number. You know what I mean? Like, hold on. This is her. Hold on a minute. I got to tell her to.
Yeah. I'm good, man. We're good.
Hold on, Mark. We're going nowhere. Okay, Mark, I'm ready. We got a few minutes. Okay. So
that's good.
Piece it all together.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question to you.
It's good.
Because we ain't done yet.
We could go for another half an hour.
1, 2, 3. I know. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. So, Mark, my next question to you is this. You have a spiritual belief, and you dealt with the religious stress disorder.
Yeah.
Let's get real. We all have, but the only ones who have that recognize it are the ones that are critical thinkers and realize they've been fed bullshit. That's when that's when that post-stress syndrome comes in, because you've been fed so much bullshit.
Yeah.
And when you wake up and realize, that's when you go, damn, I've been under this syndrome for quite some time in my life. So let's go here with this. What's the difference to you in religious narcissism?
No, it's good.
He wasn't prepared for that
I like
word. Versus spirituality.
Yeah.
Let me go here with this. So this kind of makes sense to the listeners. And I said this when we started this particular topic. People need to wake up. I'm trying to make you wake up and think outside the box, not to tell you that this is going to harm you. But people fail to realize religious narcissism has always been the gatekeepers to enslave mental, critical thinking. And even so much so, the black culture who grew up with a spiritual belief. So I'm saying to you, the spiritual.
Yeah, we need another show, but we got like Voodoo and things like that coming over from West Africa, and some of those beliefs, right? The tribal beliefs.
Well, even the Marvel superheroes were invented, and not invented, came from African tradition and got relabeled, remarketed, repackaged into a $1 billion industry, and people who can't think, like you said in your class, can't think outside the box will never know the true origin. So let's go back to what we talked about with Jesus and religious narcissism. So my question to you is, what's your terminology between religious narcissism versus spirituality? And where do you fall in between?
I'm not a spiritual person anymore. I've become somewhat of a nihilist. I don't know if I believe anything right now. And it could be just where I'm at. Like, it's like a pendulum. Like I was over here in a Pentecostal and speaking in tongues and all that stuff. And now I'm over here. And I might find a happy balance down the road, but I don't see any evidence of anything other than, perhaps there's something, because when people are actively dying, and my wife was a hospice nurse at time and had patients who were actively dying who saw like their spouses, or in one case, one guy saw his dog, waiting for him. I hope that there is some place like that, but it also could be just our brain, as we're dying, it's trying to make it pleasant enough for us to let go, because it's scary. But I would like to think that there is a place like that. That would be, we move up, we've elevated into a different kind of state. But I don't know. But religious narcissism, I love that, because everyone thinks they're right. That's the problem. And they can't all be right. They can't all be right. There's like 10,000 or 20,000 gods, but don't worry, yours is the right one. That's the kind of thing. And that's the thing. We all, and our beliefs are really just an accident of birth. If we were born in India, we probably would have one of 10,000 gods. Or if we were born in Norway, we might not have any at all, or just more pagan kind of stuff. So it depends on where we're born. And being born in the United States, we have a deep Christian background, whether it's from the South, you got the Southern Baptists, you get the Pentecostals, or, all the different flavors of Christianity. So it's accident of birth that your belief comes in.
Don't you think at one particular point, let's go a little bit deeper. I know we've been talking for a while, but that's what happens when you walk into your classroom. So let's go here for a minute. You mentioned something. If you grew up in India, you probably wind up studying Hinduism or Buddhism. If you grew up in the North, then you'd study mythology.
Right. Or you wouldn't have any beliefs. You'd be a pagan, or you would have no beliefs. You would, the church is fairly dead in Northern Europe,
But you notice a lot of them share the same similar stories of creation and involvement of mankind, but they all wind up with these, like you said, these deities of all these different gods, until one of the guys said, like, what's his name in Egypt, decided to say, okay, I'm the one and only, you get rid of everything else. Cut their heads off.
All the time. It happened in the Bible too. Josiah was consolidating power, and because they had all these different beliefs, and that'll blow your mind too, because the God of the Bible, Yahweh or Adonai, has siblings, and at one time, Elion, there's reference. We get the prefix El, like El Shaddai. El was Adonai's father.
Yeah,
and El had a wife named Asherah. And you hear about the Asherah poles being torn down in the Old Testament. That was King Josiah. Well, at one time, Asherah was Adonai's wife as well. So your God, meaning not just you, but anyone who's a Christian, your God at one time had siblings and a wife. So I don't want you to forget that. And your God has a God, his father. So that and we have evidence of that, archaeological evidence of that. So that should help believers understand that their belief shouldn't feel so narcissistic. Like, look, the more you know. No,
But it doesn't help them,
It
Mark.
won't change
That's
your
what I'm
belief
saying.
because they've identified with it. It's because there's nothing left. This is their identifier, and they don't know who they are without that belief. Their whole worldview would change, which is why probably the whole thing with aliens has ever been like broadcast. We're like trickling it out now, but that was the fear. Like, oh my God, we're going to get rid of religion.
Why do you think that is?
Control.
Why do you think that is? We just
Control.
had somebody on the show from Wisconsin. Matter of fact, it's called Sasquatch in Michigan or something like that. They were on, and we was talking about that. And I was like, how can you not know that we have been visited numerous times when Eisenhower already made an alignment with extraterrestrials during his time in office? I mean, for technology versus power and so forth. I mean, it's documented.
Right.
This is our president.
I think they would be afraid. It would cause a panic. They didn't trust the people, the American people, to be cool with it. You know, it's only the more we learn about our universe, the more we realize we're not the center of everything. We're just one tiny little galaxy, and there's trillions of them out there. You know.
Could you say that again, Professor? Could you say that again? Because I've been saying that since I was a child. And you know what they told my mom?
Yeah.
Something's wrong with him.
No,
Say, how do we have 7 planets? And Mark, you probably remember this. I remember them saying we got 7 planets. I said we have way more than 7 planets.
The more we learn.
They looked at me like I was crazy. I'm in elementary school saying we have tons of planets.
I mean, just in our own medium-sized galaxy, we've probably got 100 million suns. You know, and every one of those star systems probably has a planet or two. And that,
Is religion really that powerful, Mark, that can handicap modern individuals to not be able to think outside the box?
Well, we're seeing the effects of that right now with Christian nationalism. I mean, that's certainly the dangerous mix of religion and politics. No, religion is certainly a handicapper. I mean, we might as well get Kathy Bates out here with a sledgehammer, you know, and just cripple everyone. Yeah, really, it does, because it prevents you from thinking. It also prevents you from taking action because you're thinking God's going to do this for me. It also prevents you, especially the ones who believe in the rapture. They're waiting for Jesus to make the world good again. So it takes away the impetus for you to change the fucking planet yourself. No, you got to do something good, you know? So it removes from us the sense of right and wrong, because I don't have a God threatening hell for my punishment. So I rape and kill as much as I want, which is zero, you know? That my morality hasn't changed. It's just, I don't need threats to make me behave morally. So we don't need that. Religion, some people say, well, it could be like a suit of armor. And that's fine. And I know Christians who don't shove their beliefs down my throat, and that's perfectly fine. And they're loving, good people. So I don't want to cover them all with, the one broad stroke. But growing up in the Pentecostal background that I did, and knowing that I still see this everywhere I look, I do see the damage of religion, because it does prevent you from thinking, and it does prevent you from moving on as a whole person. And relying on some God or some genie to do something for you prevents you from doing it for yourself. And so it does stunt us. It keeps us stunted. Yeah.
What's your definition of free will? We hear that all the time. We always hear it's God's way, or we have free will.
One of the great contradictions of the Bible.
What's your definition?
If God has a free will, then why is he asking us to pray? When God knows what we need or whatever, well, then why the hell are we praying? And can we change his mind? Then he doesn't have a perfect will, I think we all have free will. Just we don't know that we do. Most of us who grew up in a church don't realize, we think our free will means sin. And that's what the church tells you. Oh, if you don't have God, you're going to go out and look for sin. I'm like, no, I just want to be a normal person, I think free will happens when you've become fully actualized. If we're going to do like Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing, you have to go through and understand your place in things. You have to learn who you are. And those are like inward journeys, and they'll take a long time. But I think free will comes, like an existentialist theory, free will comes from knowing yourself, knowing the situation, and understanding, how do I want to proceed? And I don't want to do harm. I want to make sure that everyone is treated equally and fairly, and then be able to make the right decision for you. Yeah.
Is that almost like know thyself?
I think you have to start there. anything has to be started from there. Like, the unexamined life is not worth living, which is what I borrowed to write Toxic. The unexamined faith is not worth believing. That idea of knowing yourself first is really important. And being able to chart your own course and live a life. You don't need a God to give you purpose. You don't need a God to threaten you, to make you do good things or to make you avoid bad things. I mean, we have people who do bad things no matter what. And we certainly have a lot of Christians who are doing bad things, making money off of the, flushing the chumps and taking their money. So we have a lot of crime, I think a lot of criminal Christian organizations, these mega churches. Yeah.
But somebody might say that's God's will.
I think it's a cop out.
When you hear
it's God's will. It's bullshit. It's a
God.
cop out. Because who knows what God's will is, and so God told you for sure, or are you just applying this, like pushing everything through the God sieve because it's the only way, or you're looking through God lenses so that everything has to make sense, and
so everything has to be justified through the God
and that's
portal.
a really bad excuse. And again, that's the whole effect. Like, it prevents us from doing things. Well, I didn't get a job today. It must not be God's will. I'll wait and sit here until God gives me a job. Well, it's not going to happen. Exactly.
Don't go there.
God's not going to bring food to your door. You may have to call someone, or you have to go to work and get a job. So those kinds of things. It just keeps us in a state of retardation. Mental retardation, to use like the literal term.
I like the way you
it's
said
good,
it.
man.
I'm still trying not
it's
to
all
laugh.
good. No, I agree. But
I guess I didn't get the job today. Well, wasn't it God's plan for me to get the job? But then when something does happen, it was in God's
Which
plan.
is it? Like, I love when like sports teams, or they always, whoever wins gives the glory to God. I'm like, would God hate the other team? I mean, I know he obviously hates Cleveland because they just suck, but it's like no, God doesn't give a shit about who wins. He's not concerned about that, or it's not concerned about that. If there is a God, I can make an intellectual assent to a deist God. I write about that in Toxic, like a creator God. It's just a being who's like Bob Ross, who's just like painting happy little, galaxies and stuff, but not giving a shit about what happens afterwards. Like, I'll set it in motion, but that's it. That's closer to what the founding fathers believed, the deist. And the notion of a personal relationship with Jesus and God didn't really evolve until like the 20th century, that whole thing, or late 19th century and post Civil War.
What do you think? Wait a minute. You just touched on something. And we got another guest. I know they're going to be pissed. I'm sorry to the other guests.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the podcast.
Yeah. Well, let me go here. You mentioned something, don't open up Pandora's box and don't think I'm a thinker.
Right, good. I'm
a critical thinker. So let's think of it like this for a minute before we wrap up. But we're going to talk about the podcast and the book and the other book you got coming out. The founding forefathers came over here, and you said the founding forefathers came in with a belief, but they also came over here. Let's get real. They glorified and got and glorified and participated in human slavery for millions of years, and let's get real. They didn't cover it up.
We're not the only country to have slaves. I mean, slavery is
all under God. They did it all under the glory of God.
Every culture that has slaves thinks it's God's will. I mean, the Israelites did it. They had slavery. So every culture, just again, this is how if we do it and we're successful, then God must approve. God must be okay with it because he's not telling us no. I mean, that's a really great cop-out. It's like, me as a kid going, well, if my mom, doesn't want me watching this movie at 2 a.m, she'll come out and tell me. And if she doesn't wake up and tell me not to watch this movie, then I guess it's mom's will. I mean, it's a really kind of ludicrous notion, when it comes to that. But, the forefathers believed it had more of a deist thing, but they also wanted to bring, reasoning. They were borrowing this from the age of reason and borrowing democracy and reasons like from France, from Greece. And we wanted to create a non-religious body. And that's what we have. And we have a lot of those kinds of, there might be some esoteric stuff with the Masons and maybe the ties to the Templars and things like that. Right. I hope it's all true. I really want it to be all true. I don't know. But I kind of want it. I mean, those are the kinds of things that make me like laugh, like, oh, that'd be awesome. But, yeah.
I think if people really look down the rabbit hole, I think it would. Well, let me take it back, because I think some people get information and they don't know how to deal with information. Then you get those that get information that their belief structure or their matrix is so embedded into a code that they can't get out of.
And that's part of the religious indoctrination. Another harm is that we're taught to not live by sight, but by faith. You know, it's not what you see, it's not the evidence, it's what you believe. And then God can test you at any time. So when you're going through a rough patch, maybe God's testing you, or maybe you're being tempted, or whatever, you know. So you're taught to dismiss the red flags. You're taught to dismiss the reality, because you're thinking everything you do is working on multiple levels. Because we're not just in this world. Everything we're doing is working for our eternal heaven, our eternal home. We're building up treasures in heaven. You know, and so
what if heaven is here on earth?
Then it really sucks. You know, we got to make the best of what we have, and I hope there's some better place down there. But you know, I just don't know. It would be nice. Again, I hope, and when I envision people I want to see, if there is a heaven, I think about my grandma Justice, you know, and a few other people who are close to me. Like, I would like her, if there is a heaven and we are allowed to have someone come meet us, I want it to be her, you know, where she can say, "Come on, Mark Allen."
Why is that? That's a good question. Why would you want her to be?
She's just one of my favorite people. I was so fortunate at age, 45 to still have a grandma. You know, and we just had such a special relationship for years. And I would every week I'd come over, I'd make her food or bring her food, and we would watch horror movies, you know. And that's why I created her as a character in this book. You know, she's the grandma character. So the relationship that Abby has with her grandma, and some of the things that the grandma character says are taken right from my life, from my memories. And so it was my way of honoring her. But that would be nice, because then I would say, okay, then this isn't going to be so bad. You know, if I know her and she says, "It's okay, Mark Allen, you can come on over," then okay. You know, if I get to hang out with grandma, that'd be awesome. But I don't know. I'm not in any hurry to find out. You know, I want to push that off as long as humanly possible. And just try to enjoy everything that I can do right now.
So let me go here. You're getting ready to put out your fifth book.
Let's talk about it.
Your podcast. And
the fifth book is actually book 2 of this 4-part series, the Cozy Mystery series. And I stopped writing about halfway. I haven't written about 2 years, because I just didn't feel anything anymore. You know, that's one thing I've been kind of working through, is just kind of this sense of kind of just deadness, this, depression, everything, and just didn't feel right. Like I had nothing more to say. But after 2 years of doing other things, my podcast especially, I'm feeling like, okay, I think I can get back into this world, because, a cozy mystery, as you know, it's not really my genre, but, you could find that on Amazon as well as my other books. But my second book is called Gage Black, Hell's Revenge. It's a grim and violent pulp spaghetti or splatter Western. This is my favorite book. Yeah. Because it's raw and it's 100% me, like the id that's coming out. And there's just there's like no falseness to this. Like, this is the book, like, okay, when I'm writing to a cozy audience, I can't use terrible words and horrible imagery, but this one, there's all bets are off, and it's really grim and violent. And then you've read Toxic. This was the book that I used. I was processing my religious trauma and processing, like, it just snapped. I'm like, I got to get it out. But
really, both of those.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's like a PhD, like a dissertation. Yeah. I mean, there's enough, research in here that to me, it's the best of both worlds. It's the best of, here's my ability to think critically about the doctrine and the dogma and what doesn't make sense. I'm able to poke holes in it. But it also shows my academic ability. Like, look, this is not just me going off the rails. I've done my research. Here it is. Mm-hmm. And in my last book, Death's Head, The Eye of Samedi. This is like a pulp action horror. It's a lot of fun. It's my homage to The Phantom. It's got voodoo. It's got zombies. I wrote that in, like, I wanted to do the whole book in 30 days kind of thing, and which was kind of fun. And I did that. Those are all on Amazon. You can find those. And then my 2 podcasts, Unsane Radio, unsaneradio.com, where you can find us. We do popular and unpopular culture. We talk about movies and comic books and TV shows and just whatever floats our boat. And then the other podcast that I do, it's also broadcast on Unsane Radio and on YouTube. We have Heavy Metal Horror. And this is where we talk metal, music, we talk horror films, and we interview rock stars. So, no.
Has Kiss been on there yet?
The last time I saw Kiss was like the last time I ever wanted to see Kiss, because Gene Simmons was a real asshole to me. And dude, I just paid $1,000 to meet you. What a fucking arrogant prick you are. And it just like forever changed my view of them, at least of him. I can listen to them, but he's just an asshole. So I've invited him on the show, like reaching out, like, come on, Gene, let's talk about that. But, they don't get back with me. That's okay. I'm fine with that. But no, nothing like that. But we do have a great time with the show. This is a time where I spend with my friends. Unsane Radio, I'm with my friends I've had for a long time. We get high. We have a good time. I really enjoy cannabis. That's a whole other thing. I've really come into enjoying cannabis, and which I never did for the longest time.
Oh, what is
marijuana?
What is cannabis?
Yeah,
I just wanted to hear you say
Professor
that.
Mark smokes weed. I got into it for depression and for insomnia, because I'm an insomniac. And I started by taking edibles and like learning a little bit about it. And then the academic side kicked in because I smoke carts. I don't do the flower. I don't like the way it burns. So I smoke carts. I do edibles. And then I started doing research. Of course, the academic. I'm doing research into sativas and indicas and all the different hybrids and strains. And like, this is fascinating. There are like 6,000 strains. And it's like Pokemon, like Tokemon. I've got to try them all. So that's...
What's
my
your
favorite strain?
What's your favorite?
Boy, Banana Runts is really good. I love that.
What does that do to you?
Banana Runts is a good hybrid. It has the best of both qualities. But sativa is more of a mental high, a brain high, head high, and an indica is more of a body high. Right. So indica is like called indicouch. Like if you just want to relax and chill out, indicas are the way to go. It does allow me to kind of opens my mind to thinking about things differently. Like early on, as I was like watching movies and I would be pretty high, I found myself going down like 3 or 4 rabbit holes at the same time and not knowing like which reality. They were all like realities were converging. And it was a little disorienting, but I kind of like, but now I understand it. Now it's like, when you sleep, what's it called? The dreaming, lucid dreaming. Like once you realize you're dreaming, you can kind of control it. Yeah. So now I've come a lot more in the last couple of years. I've gotten a lot more comfortable with that. So now I know how to use the different strains. Sativa for energy and focus, indica for relaxation, but I figured I'm making up for lost time. I didn't smoke. I didn't really do drugs. I rarely drank, and I don't drink. So I thought, well, I'm going to enjoy some pot.
Oh, you traded in your
I still smoke cigars once in a while. I was smoking one earlier today because it was nice out. But I do enjoy that. And it's nice to see you with a cigar. Now tell me, what are you smoking?
These are
okay.
Camachuros.
Nice. So when I come over to Indiana, we're going to have to get together and have a cigar. You know that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. So, Mark, before we wrap up, you've been through a complete transformation.
I think so.
And I think when you go through a complete transformation, you go through all different stages of what we might call life, and you definitely have come out, shining like a beautiful set of roses. What do you think made the difference for you? Why, what keeps that beast mindset going?
Well, I mean, when I was writing Toxic, I was also, mega depressed. It was working my way through that depression. The first couple 3 books are really focusing on working my way out of that depression that I wrote. And so getting out of that mindset, because I will tell you, I mean, I was eating to kill myself. I was considerably heavier at the time because I was committing suicide slowly and too cowardly to pull the trigger. And then when I realized I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to be in a much healthier space. I still had to deal with and process all the loss and all the grief and all the things that were going on, But I said, I want to be there for my friends, for my family. And so I turned my life around and dug myself out and started doing things, taking better care of myself. And lost 125 pounds and I'm still going because I want to be around as long as possible, you know? And when that tunnel vision comes in, at least it did for me, it was like it was a weird feeling because I felt like cocooned. I felt so numb to things that I didn't care. I was ready to go. And knowing how close I came to like ending it all, I look at that and say, okay, that was me reacting to all the things that were going on, all the loss that I had. It makes sense to have gone through this loss and trauma and to come out thinking, God, there's just nothing worth living for. And it was in that rebuilding process after writing Toxic and realizing I don't have faith to rely on. I have to rely on me and finding a strength that I didn't know I had. And like that was based on me. And the more I've used it, the more I realize I'm comfortable with what I know. I'm comfortable knowing that I'm going to be the outcast in my family because I don't believe what they believe. But that's okay. You know, it's irrelevant. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because I can't change their belief and they're certainly not going to change mine. So we just kind of let it go. And then focus on the things that do make me happy. You know, the relationship with my wife, with the podcast with my friends, and just finding some purpose and just enjoying everyday life, you know, and realizing, Jesus, we've only got one go around, as my grandma would say. So you might as well do what makes you happy. And the older I get, the more I want to slow things down and the more I want to fill my time with what's important and the people closest to me and spend as much time with those people as I can. And that's really what's important. It's not about stuff. It's not about money. Although it'd be nice to have a little more money, but it's about who I spend time with and what I want to do and making sure that at every day, the people who are important to me know it, that they're important and that's what keeps me going. Yeah.
That sounds beautiful. Mark, how can the viewers reach out to you to know more about your journey, know more about your podcast?
Well, they can go to Amazon to find my books. They can email me, heavymetalhorror@yahoo.com. Heavy Metal Horror is Heavy Metal Horror Podcast on Facebook, Heavy Metal Horror Podcast on YouTube. Unsaneradio.com is also a website you can go. My books are there. Let's see the podcasts. So yeah, they can reach me that way. They can find me, you know, on any of the YouTube channels that we are running shows on. They can reach out to me, or if they forget the address, they can reach to me through you. But yeah, welcome. I'd love for you to come and join sometime on Unsane Radio or Heavy Metal Horror sometime. If you'd like to do that, that would be awesome to have you on. And we can talk about horror movies. We can talk about all kinds of stuff. You know, that'd be great, David.
And I'm just going to throw this out there now for the viewers. You can also listen to the podcast on the I Am Beast radio station and I Am Beast podcast network and Roku as well to watch all of Mark's
we need to get it on there.
Give me some
That's
more,
right. We want to have a bigger presence on the I Am Beast network. We want to have Unsane Radio episodes, which are audio only. We want to have Heavy Metal Horror, which are video and audio. Everything on unsaneradio.com is audio only. But I love the video format. I like being able to see people, and so that's why we like doing the YouTube. But yeah, that'd be awesome. And I know you got to wrap up because your guest has been waiting patiently. I want to thank you for having me back on, Andre. I really appreciate the opportunity. Yes, please
have you back on. I mean, I don't get a chance to really express a lot of the creative sides, the things that, you know, nobody has been able to really get into this mind, you know, and I tell people to get into my mind, you got to be able to be emotionally intelligent. You got to be able to really understand and think critical outside of the box and really be able to reason. I'm not saying everything that I say is going to be correct and for your taste, but the good part about me is I'm man enough or human enough that I'm going to sit there and listen to everything you say, and I'm going to internalize it, and I'm going to see if it fits and try to see how it fits into my universe.
You're open-minded and you're receptive, and that's hallmarks of critical thinking. And you do have the ability to say, you know what, this is great, but it's not for me, and that's okay. I know there are people
Right.
probably really angry at me. You've probably got this, you have a big audience. And I know some of those Christians are probably really pissed at me. And they're probably, that's fine. And I'm not here to like make anyone angry. I just invite them to question, question your faith.
Christians, but if they're Christians, are they religious based? Then I think the first thing that they learn is how to forgive and understand that
Yes,
you have free will.
And I invite them to there's a resource I found on Facebook and Instagram, Dr. Daniel McClellan, who's a wonderful Bible scholar, and his whole message is data over dogma, and because he looks at Christian doctrine as being harmful. I mean, I'm living proof of that. The whole, you're a wicked sinner and all that jazz. You grow up thinking about that as a teenager. You're just thinking you're a terrible person. That does lifelong damage. So if I can get one person to begin thinking critically and listen to the red flags going off in their head, and listen to that cognitive dissonance and say, this Bible doesn't make any sense. Yes, lean into it. Learn more about it. Learn more about the doctrines, where they came from. Because the more you learn, the less you're going to believe, because you will know the truth. And as the Bible says, the truth will set you free.
With that said,
my pleasure.
Mark, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been another, and I do mean another, exciting episode of the Andre the Beast.
It's been great, man.
Creighton Show.